unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time.
So I've been pushing this ideology called radical individualism for about the last 30 years. Essentially my entire adult life. And even before then, before I really knew what the concept of individualism was, I was always like, the individual, be an individual, think for yourself, be different. I remember in school, driving our bikes to school, we would we didn't want our chain guards. The idea of having a cool bike was that at least this little trend in my neighborhood was to make it more like a dirt bike, and take off the chain guard, take off all the unnecessary stuff, So when you take your chain guard off, you're in the 70s. That's a dangerous a combination because you've got bell-bottom pants and these teeth right by your leg. So the chain, your pant leg would get caught in the chain, between the chain and the sprocket all the time, which is a bummer because it can twist up and lock up and nearly break your leg. But the result was, there was also a trend that may be related that was knee-high gym socks with the stripes. And so if you wanted to take your chain guard off and not die with your bell-bottom pants, you'd wrap your bell-bottom pants and shove them into your sock. You'd pull your sock up over your pants, There you go. Now you're a dipshit with your sock. But you don't have to do this on one side, by the way, because the chain's not on both sides. The sprocket's only on one side of the bike. So you do this with one leg and not the other. Well, look at me. I thought, getting off my bike at school with that look, I thought, I like this look. I like this asymmetrical look. It's stupid, it's silly, but most of all, it advertises that I have a bike. Maybe, I don't know if I thought this exactly, but anyway, I adopted it as my fashion statement. I went into school and left my sock like that, I can't remember the exact details of what happened, but I can imagine somebody said, "What are your leg, you what?" And I just smugly, insisted that they didn't understand fashion like I did. But anyway, that evolved. I did that for quite a while, even at times when I wasn't even riding my damn bike. And then that evolved into wearing my wristwatch on my ankle. I mean, if this isn't the stupidest fashion statement in the world, what is? But I did. I had, those little digital, this is really stupid. So the digital watch that I had were those ones you'd push the button on and the red numbers would appear, And so I would have to lift up my leg to check the time. And of course, that was part of the humorous fashion statement that I thought I was making. Robin Williams was Mork at the time. Mork and Mindy was on TV. So he was odd and he was quirky, and I decided that was going to be my thing too. Not to be like Mork, but to be odd and quirky. I remember Donny Osmond had purple socks. I liked that. I put orange shoelaces in my shoes because everybody else wanted red and blue. So I wasn't that far. I wanted the colored laces, but I had to pick orange. Things like that. But I mean, with the sock, that was ridiculous. I had to lift up my leg to see what time it was. And then since I wanted to perform that function so often, if you had one of those watches, that the batteries didn't last for shit. You were supposed to check the time once or twice a day. I was fucking checking that time all day long throughout class. A, I wanted to see it, but B, I wanted people to see me doing it. Yeah, I was retarded. Don't get me started. That's a rhyme. I'm a poet and didn't even know it. I can make it rhyme any old time. Anyway, so individualism, yeah, always important to me. And I guess it's probably evolved because I had 17 brothers and sisters living in my house, and I wanted to stand out. I didn't want to be like them. Who knows what I would have been like if that wasn't part of the deal. I'll never know. But so that's always been important to me. And foundationally, it's been just so important to me. Like, the individual is so important. So being a radical individualist, I see that everywhere I see something good. I attribute individualism with Christ, Christianity. I always thought Christianity, that's individualism. You know, Christ treated every single person like an important thing. The individual is so much more important. Collectivism, that's the worst. That is the worst, you know. Communism, terrible. Socialism, anything that, tribalism, anything that diminishes the individual is the worst. And that kind of attitude has carried me, has stuck with me all my life, including into my adult years. And even more recently, up until even recently, I've been arguing for that. But I kind of had an epiphany that probably most of you had when I was checking my ankle watch. And that is, it's not either or. It's not either or. This is where individualists, other so-called individualists that I know, seem to get it wrong too. And I noticed it in a friend of mine, you know, that, let's just put it this way, it's becoming very clear, the left has made it very clear that they are on a warpath to communism, that the tribe is the only thing that matters, your race is the only thing that matters, your gender is the only thing that matters, your collective is the only thing that matters, for the greater good. The tribe is first. I've had hints that I knew about this all along, but I'm only recently really putting it together that it is about importance. And it's not a contest between individualism and collectivism, or individualism and tribalism, or communism is more of a political term, but it's not a choice. It's just a matter of what is the value. And for me, the value still has to be that the individual is the most important thing, but the other things can be important too. You know, look at me. I'm a radical individualist that's been arguing for radical individualism my whole life. I'm the only individualist I know that behaves this way, and I'm totally alone. I'm not complaining about this, but I'm alone, you know? And I recognize that that's not ideal. That's super not ideal. I look at friends of mine now that have 5 or 10 grandkids, and I think that's superior. That's a better way to live. Or if nothing else, it's not as weird, you know? It's not as ideologically contrived, you know? And I'm not saying that I contrived my desire to be an individual, you know? I mean, I did. I thought about tucking that pant leg into the gym sock. I certainly thought about buying a whole set of 30 colored suits and wearing the same thing every day. I've certainly contrived my look, crafted, you know, this champion of individualism. But where did I get that drive? What made me want to do that, not other people? You know? And that's another mistake that I think individualists make, and at least I'll just speak for myself, is that you can't just artificially give somebody a drive that they don't have, I don't think. Or maybe you can, but maybe you shouldn't. Do we need to teach a zebra to not be a herd animal? You probably can. Should you? I mean, some pretty much other conditions have to be met before you do that. If you just take a zebra out and put him in another part of the Serengeti all on his own, you say, okay, zebra, just be yourself. He paints himself pink. Well, he ain't going to last long. Lion's going to see him, and his disguise of the stripes no longer works anymore because the stripes work to disguise him against the herd. When you pluck him out, he's all by himself. He's an easy target. He's gone. Goodbye. Pretty simple stuff, really. I got that part of it, and I'd always try to craft an argument against that. And it's not hard to do because what I see, again, it's the hierarchy. What's most important? Imagine the individual as a point in the middle of a board. And then you have concentric circles that go out from it. You're the individual. The next little circle is your family. The next one is your friends. The next one out is your neighborhood. The next one out from that, your town or your city, and your state, your region, your country, and it extends. That makes sense to me, that the individual is the most important part of that equation. And it should be at the top of that equation. But that doesn't negate the rest of the board, of the circles. The rest of the circles are still important. I think what happens is that collectivists, people get really upset at that term, or individuals do, because sometimes that's flipped entirely the other way, because they don't want the individual to be important at all. And so they go, the biggest concentric circle, which is humanity, that's the most important. The largest one, the circle that's furthest away from the individual, that's the one that they prize. And that's also stupid. It's also stupid to put the individual last. I mean, that's the worst. That's the inversion of that chart. That chart with the individual at the middle, is the most important chart you'll see. But that, again, to me, that's religious, to chart it out. I think it's scientific in it's a fact that you are an individual, that one zebra is an individual in the herd. But it becomes idealistic when you say that individual needs to operate as an individual and not cooperate. When you turn it into a fight against the collective, I think that's when it becomes a bad dogma. There's these videos going around recently. It's a trend where you've probably seen them on Facebook, where you see a monkey and a pig and a dog and a chicken, and they're all snuggled up and playing together or sleeping together in a wheelbarrow. And I love this trend. It's the most adorable thing in the world, But when I see it, I think, oh man, that's an example of, people would say, everything has a beautiful spirit. They just want to get along, and animals really want to get along and don't eat animals and blah, blah, blah. Great. Super. I want to sign up for it because it's beautiful to look at, But when you really think about it, that's because these animals aren't fighting for resources, because their resources and their needs are met by who? A human. A human's coming in and giving them all plenty of food, teaching them all, putting them in the same thing, probably guiding them to not fight with one another, probably showing a good example. In other words, they're essentially imposing some sort of religion or structure on them. But the most important part is that their needs are met. They're not having to compete, right? It's very easy to be the individual checking his ankle watch when your needs are met, when nobody's starving, when nobody's hungry, when there's not a war between tribes. As soon as the war between tribes comes on, maybe the ankle watch isn't so great because that is like, let's get the ankle watch guy. Maybe better to put on a uniform in a battle, in a war. Maybe better to stick with your family. I read this Reddit, Ask Me Anything Reddit thing a while back, a couple years ago. I think it was right at the beginning of the lockdowns, where somebody was talking about the Bosnian War, or maybe it was a Slovakian, one of those wars back there with a bunch of white people fighting a bunch of white people. But he was talking about what actually happens when shit hits the fan and society goes under and government disappears and resources get scarce. And he was just basically laying out exactly what you need to survive. And this guy, first thing, you got to find a group. You got to be with your family. That's the most important part. You can't be alone. If you're alone, you'll die. Simple as that. And I thought, well, that's kind of extreme. You can hide out. He goes, no, you can't hide out for very long because people are hunting through houses. When things get tough, people are going through on missions looking for food. So if you're in a home, unless you're living in a hole in the ground that nobody can see, you're not going to be able to hide for long. They're going to come knocking at your door. And it doesn't matter how many guns you have by yourself, it's not going to work when 20 guys with guns come to your door. And that's what happens when shit goes south. People form small groups. They have lookouts. This all should be totally obvious stuff, you know? But the group becomes super important, you know? So, yeah, my epiphanies, I'm a dumb person. I'm telling you, I'm a dumb person. Things that some people learned when they were children have taken me my whole life to learn. That's just a fact. Hopefully some of you are as dumb as me. But, yeah, it's really about finding the balance. I say this all the time, nature mitigates and nature finds balance. You can't just preach individualism versus collectivism, because that's not it. It's not it. You know, the individual, in true and real individual, if you really prize the individual above all else, then you will want to provide that individual with everything that makes that individual survive and flourish. What are those things? Families, tribes, cities, cultures, groups, you know? Obviously, the further you go out in those concentric circles, the further you get away from the individual, the less helpful it is to identify with a bigger group. But even as I say that, what's a country? You know, it's easy for libertarians and individualists to idealize and go, oh, but if borders were gone, in a way, that all just hands everything over to the globalists or the communists, you know? If you diminish all the circles between the individual and the total 100% communist all, the greater good for all, if you diminish all, if you erase all those other ones, like the family, the friends, the neighborhood, you're screwed up. You fucked up because you've erased the individual. Even if you didn't try to, you inverted the chart, you know, and you diminish the individual because you've deprived the zebra of the strength of his herd, or the lion, or the giraffe, or the Negro, or the Italian, or the honky, or the kike, you know, or the Jew. You've denied them their herd. The people that care about them more than they care about the others. It's a big trick. There's this idea going around that Israel, or the adherents of Judaism, created the Christian church in order to preach individualism, in order to get rid of every tribe but theirs. It's a pretty good theory. I don't know if it's true, but it's a pretty good theory to say, hey, I got an idea. Let's create two churches. In our church, we'll say family is important, tribe is important, we're important, a collective is important, we work for each other, we are our brother's keeper. But let's give them a church that says, no, never see somebody's color, never see somebody's tribe or culture. It's only the individual. You must be colorblind. I kind of bought into that for a long time. I'm colorblind. I don't care. It's not true. I'm not colorblind. Neither are you. None of us are colorblind. We know our friends that are black and Latin. We know who they are. You can make a list. Tell me who your black friends are. Oh, I didn't remember them. I don't think of them as black. Shut up. Fuck you. Yes, you do. You know who your black friends are. You know who your tall friends are, and your short friends, and your stinky friends, and your friends that smell great. It's part of nature. And I think a lot of the individualism that I've thrown out over the years has been, while not blind to the rest, it's very, very easy to get tripped into binary this or that, rather than this a little bit more than that, this above that. We start fighting. Like, you look at how people argue about Islam versus Judaism. Look how Christians argue about Judaism versus Islam. Both of those ideologies, which aren't genetic, by the way, are ideological enemies of Christianity, right? But, at one point, the towers come down and everybody's anti-Islam. Islam is the worst, and therefore Judaism is fighting Islam, and Judaism is now our best ally because they're fighting Islam. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, And then suddenly no longer do you see that Judaism is also your ideological enemy. Guess what? They can both be enemies, and they can both be friends. You can pick and choose the things that they're doing that's good and things that are bad, and then you can order them. This one's slightly better than this one. This one's slightly worse than this one. You can rank anything. It's got probably the way to think about things, too. It's just like, rather than that binary thing, I know I sound like a leftist, too, on this. You're being so binary. Yeah, well, it's dumb to be binary because there's nuance, I mean, even as I say that, do you want to have a glass of water? No. I will no longer consume liquids. It's kind of a binary choice you're making there. If you don't do it, I guess that fits so. I'll have a glass of water now, but I don't want one too much. Anyway, so that's kind of my thoughts for today about individualism. The individualism needs to be prized above all. That's the order. But that doesn't mean that collectives aren't also important. You are going to need to be part of some sort of collective when the shit goes down. It's easy to say, no, I'm an individual. I don't need anybody. I'm going to be alone, just me and my dog and my birds. If you can say that, that means times are good. You're the little monkey in the wheelbarrow taking a nap with the pig and the puppy and the bunny and the chicken, because there's plenty of food and shelter. Start taking away the food, start taking away the shelter, and you're going to need a tribe. And let me tell you, that little picture of the monkey and the chicken and the puppy and the duck all in a wheelbarrow, taking a nap, looking cozy. You could write a storybook about how they band together and they're the tribe. But that's not true. Not going to happen. Couple of days without food. Couple days without food. And that monkey is tearing that chicken's head off. And he's eating that chicken. And he might rip off another leg of that chicken, and hand it to his other monkey friend. The monkeys are more likely to bond together, and the chickens are too. I don't know. Don't get me started. You get my point. It's wrong to pretend that race doesn't matter. It is wrong to pretend that gender doesn't matter. It is wrong to pretend that tribe doesn't matter, that family doesn't matter. That shit matters. It's not top of the list right now, but you're going to have to collectivize if you want to. If there's another tribe coming over the hill to take all your bitches, and your supply of Snickers from the storeroom, you're going to have a group to fight them. Anyway, that's my sermon for today. Thanks for listening.